It all starts in a sinister forest with twisted trees and dark moss scattered everywhere. The sky in this place is always cloudy and gloomy, giving off a constant sense of danger. In the midst of this, we see a young man fighting for his life, while driving a knife into a monstrous creature's chest. The monster ends up drooling something gross on his face, leaving him in a pretty tight spot. Then the beast opens a gigantic mouth full of sharp teeth to devour the young man once and for all. But suddenly, blood splatters everywhere, indicating he couldn't get away. With that, the boy wakes up startled in his bed, realizing it was all nothing but a nightmare. Sweating cold, he touches his own neck, feeling a pain as real as if he had actually passed away. The protagonist sighs wearily, remembering that he has been suffering from these same bad dreams for 12 long years. Outside, the day breaks sunny and peaceful in the city, totally contrasting with the young man's night. Later, he appears writing down those beasts' weaknesses in a notebook to try and survive next time. He gets up from the chair exhausted, thinking he can even handle the pain of getting hurt in those delusions. His room is full of notes and training equipment, showing how much this boy has prepared. However, what really destroys his mind is the simple act of trying to sleep, since the exhaustion is extreme. As soon as he closes his eyes in the real world, he ends up transported back to that hell full of critters, and if he gets defeated in the dream, he ends up waking up in real life, feeling the full impact of what happened there. Because of this, the young man clutches his chest in pain, realizing that having a normal night's sleep is impossible. Frustration takes over his face as he curses this terrible situation that haunts him. To avoid suffering more, the warrior spent 12 years training martial arts and survival tactics. This way, he charges forward furiously with his sword, ready to face the dangers of this endless nightmare. Thanks to all this effort, being defeated and losing his life in there became something increasingly rare. But even winning the battles, he knows this doesn't solve his biggest drama. Here, the warrior realizes the main problem continues to be the lack of true rest. That's why a doctor recommended he try finding a hobby or something he really liked doing to relax his mind. The young man looks thoughtful, trying to imagine what that special thing to do could be. However, looking up, he sighs, admitting that his only wish right now is to manage to fall asleep. With an exhausted face, the fighter reflects that he just wanted to have a peaceful night, at least once in his life. But suddenly, his nose starts bleeding uncontrollably, and out of nowhere, at that moment, he feels a sharp pain in his chest while coughing up blood, and his vision goes completely blurry. Then the poor guy widens his eye, totally confused about what is happening to his own body. Without strength, the young man collapses on the bedroom floor, forming a huge red puddle around him. With that, he loses consciousness and lies there stretched out, appearing to have reached his absolute limit. But soon after, the protagonist wakes up, finding it strange that his body feels light, and the headache has disappeared. Looking at the flowers, he notices the wonderful sensation of having slept well for the first time in 12 years. At this, the boy wonders if he ended up passing away and going to paradise. He continues observing the leaves of the trees swaying, while trying to understand what place this is. The surrounding forest is lush and full of life, with a beautiful waterfall cascading in the background. However, upon leaning against the giant roots of a tree, he gets a huge scare as he recognizes the environment. The survivor widens his eyes, realizing that this is the exact world of nightmares where he suffered for a decade. In that instant, a sudden noise catches his attention, making him turn his face quickly to see what it is. He hides behind a large root, while a monstrous lizard passes by looking for prey. The bizarre creature lets out a scary growl, showing off sharp teeth and a disgusting tongue. Still hidden, the young man remembers the amount of blood he lost in the real world right before passing out. With that, the young man deduces the injuries were too severe and he didn't make it in his own room. So, the kneeling warrior takes a deep breath, trying to stay calm to think about the next step. Then he stands up, understanding that in case he gets defeated in this place, he will have nowhere else to return to. With a determined look, the survivor accepts that from now on, this nightmare is his new life. Watching the beast, he knows very well how the rules work around here and what he needs to do to live. Thinking fast, the fighter decides to avoid combat and plans to flee to a lit place that monsters hate. However, Upon trying to retreat, he feels a very different sensation taking over his entire mind. Holding the hilt of his blade firmly, the boy gets confused, trying to understand the origin of this sudden emotion. Instead of retreating, he quickly draws his weapon and charges with full force. Feeling zero desire to run from the battle, the lizard monster notices the movement immediately, turning its face in surprise at the human's attitude. Standing unarmed, he deduces that this great courage comes from having rested very well and being in a younger body. Without wasting time, the bizarre creature takes a powerful leap in his direction, ready to crush the target. In the air, the beast lets out a deafening boom, falling like a meteor to show all its brutality. Gripping the sword handle with both hands, the fighter feels every muscle in his body boiling with lots of energy. Having a slight gleam in his eyes, he focuses his thoughts on just two things: fighting with everything he has and winning. Making a precise and devastating move, the young man hits the big lizard squarely, defeating the critter right then and there. Dirtying his clothes after the blow, he turns his face with a relentless expression, showing that the game has just changed. With a brutal impact, the creature's body collapses on the ground, kicking up dust everywhere. Then the lizard falls defeated, while the young man observes the beasts fall up close. Up in the sky, rays of light begin to illuminate the gloomy environment, indicating a change. Without wasting time, the warrior climbs onto the beast's back and uses the sword to open the carcass. Then he cuts a strange part inside there, finding something that emits a strong blue glow. Holding that luminous sphere, the survivor stares at the item, trying to understand what it is. With that, the young man reflects if the thing might be valuable since he took it from inside the monster. At that moment, he decides to take a risk and takes a bite of the core, sucking out all the energy. After that, the fighter takes a deep breath, observing the giant trees and the sunlight up high. Having a strong gleam in his eyes, the boy promises himself he will survive no matter the cost. But for this to work out, he knows he needs to follow a main objective before anything else. So, the protagonist runs as fast as he can, crossing the forest with a lot of focus. His plan is to head towards the light, to find a safe place far from the darkness. Later, we see the young man taking a nice nap, leaning against the branch of one of those trees. The wind blows gently on the leaves, creating a peaceful atmosphere he never had in his life. With a serene face, the warrior enjoys every second of rest, keeping his eyes closed. A slight smile appears, showing how good it is to finally manage to sleep in peace. Then, the fighter wakes up invigorated and full of energy. After another night of deep sleep, looking at the sky, the leaves continue flying while he gets ready to start walking again. By now, he has been traveling for a month, cutting through the brush and leaving the shadows, seeking a new destination. Looking at the forest, he thinks that just because he feels like fighting, it doesn't mean he's going to go around hunting anything. Hidden behind the tree, the young man sees a giant bat devouring prey and thinks it's crazy to risk his life for nothing. However, his heart beats faster, showing that the urge to enter combat is very hard to control. With a slight smile, the survivor reflects that he only takes action when that absurd hunger strikes. Then he charges with full force, landing a precise blow that defeats the flying critter in the blink of an eye. The other reason to fight is to manage to get that glowing core that stays hidden inside the beasts. So, the warrior bites the luminous item, sucking all that mysterious energy into his own body. Wiping his face, he realizes that swallowing this grants the chance to absorb the absurd strength of these monsters. Later, resting on the trunk, the fighter understands that adapting to this world has become easier using this method. Besides that, the boy looks through the leather bag tied to his waist, remembering a very important detail. In his hand, we see a bronze plate indicating that the former owner of this body worked as a mercenary. The most bizarre thing of all is the fact that the protagonist manages to read perfectly the strange words written on the metal. Widening his eye, the adventurer reasons quickly about the true meaning of finding an object like that. This clearly proves that there are other people alive inhabiting some corner of this dangerous universe. Going back to walking, the young man finally finds an area of the forest totally illuminated by solar rays. But suddenly, he stops walking, making an expression of total surprise at something on the ground. Looking at the grass, the young man gets a good scare upon noticing an iron structure hidden in the brush. The contraption is a giant trap, used to capture large predators that pass by there. With a serious face, the explorer puts the pieces together, deducing what this discovery really means. In that instant, he jumps over an immense log, full of hope to find humans nearby. Coming out from behind the trees, the young man finally finds a clearing illuminated by sun rays. Looking down, he has the wonderful view of a small wooden cabin, built in the middle of nowhere. His face fills with surprise and hope upon confirming that that really is a human dwelling. Without wasting time, the young man knocks on the open door and peeks inside, asking if anyone is home. Since no one answers, the explorer enters the place and notices something very interesting on top of the wooden table. There, he touches the cover of an old and mysterious book that possesses those same strange letters. Flipping through the pages, the survivor discovers that it is a large record about the realm of monsters. His eyes widen instantly, realizing the gold mine he just found. Reading carefully, the warrior notes that the entire history and terms of this world are noted there in detail. With a very serious expression, the young man deduces that having that diary is an absolute necessity to survive. But suddenly, a heavy footstep on the wooden floor catches his attention, breaking the silence of the place. Looking up, he sees a white-haired gentleman pointing a deadly crossbow in his direction. The old man stares at the intruder with a lot of anger, demanding to know who he is before shooting without mercy. The protagonist is happy to see a human but wonders if the old guy thinks he is a bandit. Staying calm, the boy raises his hands, explaining that he just saw the house and entered out of pure curiosity. However, the gentleman doesn't want to chat and orders him to get the heck out of there as fast as possible. Without making sudden movements, the fighter agrees with the order, showing he doesn't want to cause trouble. But before leaving, he places his hand on top of that valuable survival guide. Holding the object, the traveler asks politely if he could take the item, promising to pay if needed. At that moment, the old man frowns suspiciously and asks what the young man would do if he refused the request. Staring at the old man, the young man thinks to himself that he really needs that book to manage to survive in this world. With that, the young man subtly moves his hand to his waist, preparing to draw his sword if necessary. At that moment, the warrior reflects that if the old guy doesn't cooperate, he will have to turn into a robber to steal the item. He jumps into the room with his hand on his weapon, ready to start a mortal combat against that marksman. Meanwhile, the gentleman continues pointing his loaded crossbow directly at the boy's chest without blinking. Observing the old man's stance, the protagonist concludes he doesn't know the enemy's strength, but is sure he would come out the winner. However, the hunter lets out a heavy sigh and lowers the weapon, realizing the situation doesn't need to end in tragedy. The old guy understands that a real bandit wouldn't ask to read a book and introduces himself, saying his name is Hector. Seeing the man lowered his guard, the young man relaxes his stance and decides to reveal that his real name is Kim Woojin. Scratching his beard, the hunter thinks that name is very strange, so the young man suggests he just call him Jin. With a drop of sweat on his face, the traveler realizes the pronunciation of his original name is complicated for the people there. Next, Hector holds the book, warning that the item is very precious, and that's why the boy will have to live there to read it. But as payment for this stay, the old man hands over the guide, asking only that the young man help with daily chores. With the deal sealed, night falls over the forest, and the survivor finally gains a safe shelter to rest. Later, a pot of hot soup boils on the fire, illuminating the cabin's interior with a very welcoming atmosphere. Then the owner of the house tells the kid to eat, proving that despite being kind of grumpy, he is far from being a bad guy. Holding the wooden plate, the warrior is enchanted, smelling hot food he hasn't seen in a long time. Taking the first spoonful, a tear runs down the boy's face as he starts thinking the old man is actually an angel. The next day, the hunter gets ready to leave, and the fighter asks if he will take long to return from the mission. With a distant look, the old guy heads into the forest, focused on seeking revenge against the beast that eliminated his friend. Observing the hunter's tense face, the young man realizes the target of the revenge must be a very powerful creature. With that, the old man leaves the cabin carrying his weapon, while the boy stays alone thinking about the danger out there. Taking advantage of the free time, the protagonist devours every page of that record, trying to learn everything about the place. The story tells that the disaster started in the Northern Empire, where greed destroyed an entire city. The king of that time was blinded by the desire for power and ended up trying to open a forbidden portal to another world. He believed he would find the absolute truth inside, but ended up unleashing a devastating force. Then a dark tower full of evil eyes appeared in the middle of the kingdom, starting the true apocalypse. From inside it, masses of disgusting flesh came out that turned into monsters thirsty for human blood. In just 9 years, these beasts took over everything, turning the North into a complete demonic realm. To avoid extinction, humans created an alliance and built a giant barrier to contain the advance of evil. Finishing the reading, the young man closes the book cover. Feeling the weight of all this historical tragedy, scratching his chin, he admits the information is useful, but realizes something isn't making much sense. The text says the deeper you enter this territory, the stronger the monsters become. However, the warrior remembers that the beasts got weaker as he approached the light, which is quite strange. Meanwhile, back in the forest, we see old Hector running desperately with his crossbow in hand, fleeing from something. In the cabin, the young man wonders how deep he was wandering before arriving at this safe haven. The hunter breathes with difficulty, showing that age weighs heavily when escaping a mortal threat. Behind him, a pack of demonic wolves charges with blood in their eyes, ready to tear the prey apart. The gentleman pushes his legs to the max, trying to gain distance from these fast and lethal creatures. Suddenly, one of the wolves jumps to bite, but the old man slides on the ground, escaping the fangs by a hair. The hunter tries to fight back by firing his arrows while jumping backward, seeking a better position, but the werewolf is too agile and dodges the shots with frightening ease. The beast shows its red eyes and sharp teeth, ready to shred the human prey. Seeing his attacks had no effect, the old man curses nervously, feeling death approaching. He ends up being thrown back and notices that the boy is walking calmly toward the danger. Jin advances without fear, holding a huge machete, and with that sinister red glow in his eyes. Desperate, the gentleman screams, telling the kid to run from there because that creature is too dangerous. However, ignoring the warning, the young man jumps over the old man, drawing his weapon to start the attack. Hector widens his eyes in shock, looking up without understanding the young man's suicidal attitude. In the air, the protagonist focuses totally on the target with a cold expression of someone who knows exactly what he is doing. Then he pushes off a tree using brute force that makes the wood crack. Flying high above the forest, the warrior prepares the blade to deal a mortal blow. The monster tries to react, raising its giant claws to defend against that aerial attack. But the human's speed is absurd, and the sword comes down heavy as if it were lightning. A perfect vertical cut goes through the beast's defense, tearing through everything in its path. With that, the werewolf's body is split in half, and the boy lands on the ground with elegance. Seeing the leader eliminated in an instant, the other wolves break abruptly, terrified. The beasts retreat, growling low, realizing that human is a far superior predator. The old man sweats cold and stammers, totally incredulous at the absurd power he just witnessed. Standing next to the slain monster, Jin cleans the weapon, proving that defeating that beast was too easy. At this, the old hunter stares at the young man with wide eyes, unable to say a word in front of that scene. With blood on his face, the young man turns to him, asking mockingly if that critter was really considered strong. The veteran asks if the young man truly has doubts about the absurd strength of a werewolf. With a very serious look, the hunter states that these beasts are incredibly powerful and dangerous. The young man just listens to the warning with a calm expression while processing the information. Then, the warrior turns to face the rest of the pack emerging from the trees. The wolves grow furiously, bearing sharp fangs and eyes eager for a good fight. But the protagonist notices there are about 40 of them, and that one mistake could be his end. With that in mind, he plans to focus on the second, in command to break the entire pack's morale. At that moment, the young man's eyes glow a deep red, showing his intense battle spirit. Identifying the larger beast right in front, the fighter decides who his first target will be. Then he leaps through the air, surrounded by a dark and threatening aura. The beast stares at the attack with glowing blue eyes, feeling an immediate sense of doom. The young man's red glow seems to pierce the monster's soul, leaving it totally paralyzed. Realizing the true danger, the creature freezes and begins to tremble in pure terror before the human. Suddenly, the other pack members become confused, not understanding their leader's hesitation. Without a second thought, the predators begin to flee desperately to save themselves. With that, the monsters let out whimpers of fear as they run as fast as they can. In an instant, the battlefield becomes empty as the wolves disappear into the thick woods. He watches the mass escape while holding his heavy blade and maintaining his combat stance. Surprised, old Hector can hardly believe that such brave animals fled without a fight. Finally, the traveler reflects that the veteran truly knows how to read a situation very well. The pack leader flees with a desperate whimper as he realizes he has no chance against the human. With the threat resolved, the atmosphere in the forest turns calm again, and the two return to the safety of the cabin. Inside, the veteran shows the beast's remains, explaining that the reward for the creature is worth 40 gold coins. Hearing the amount, the young man asks curiously if that's considered a lot of money in this place. The old man confirms, saying that this cash is enough to live very well for about 7 years without working. But the young man is shocked, thinking that such a weak monster carries such a high reward. With a smirk, the adventurer realizes he has found a very easy way to get rich in this new world. He reflects that he just needs to hunt similar creatures whenever he needs some change to fill his pockets with gold. At that moment, the boy concludes that life here might be much more peaceful than his last 12 years. Then, the hunter begins to set aside several useful items, like furs and a detailed map of the region, to give to his guest. The old man touches the werewolf fur, remembering how dangerous that creature was for the common village folk. He advises that the young man can sell the leather for a fair price, and Jin asks if he can really accept something so valuable. But the old-timer insists, saying the price is fair since the kid helped him complete his personal vendetta. The old man extends his hand in a gesture of respect, showing he recognizes the value of his new ally. Looking into the young man's eyes, the veteran thanks him from the bottom of his heart and hopes they meet again in the future. The two shake hands, sealing an unlikely friendship born in the middle of that dark forest's chaos. The protagonist gives thanks for everything he learned there and prepares to continue his journey into the unknown. Outside, the sun lights the path, showing that a new chapter is about to begin for the traveler. Carrying his new equipment, the warrior gives a parting bow while the old man watches from the doorway. Thus, the survivor walks down the forest road with the goal of exploring every corner of this mysterious universe. The young man continues his walk while a bizarre creature watches him from the top of a large boulder. This creature has strange horns and glowing blue eyes, monitoring every move the traveler makes. The beast lets out a low growl, showing that the danger in that region is far from over. Finally, the survivor spots the large wooden walls of what is called Pioneer Village. Standing before the gate, he reflects that the place seems much larger and more organized than he imagined. The young man passes the guards and enters the village, carrying all his gear on his back. Walking through the streets, the fighter notices the atmosphere is heavy, and everyone looks ready for a fight. At that moment, several muscular and armed men stare at the newcomer with unfriendly looks. The protagonist wonders if all that suspicion is just because he is a complete stranger in town. He concludes that in this cruel world, people can become much bigger threats than the monsters themselves. Ignoring the stares, the adventurer spots a tavern sign and decides to go in to look for information. The inside of the place is packed with mercenaries drinking and talking about the day's missions. The young man walks across the room, attracting the attention of everyone present as they stop to watch him. Reaching the counter, the tavern keeper offers a cold drink while the boy places his goods on the wood. However, he refuses the drink and asks directly where he can find a man named Jacob. Suddenly, a man sitting right behind him turns around curiously upon hearing his own name mentioned. This is Jacob, who introduces himself with a shabby face and a very suspicious expression. The young man explains he was sent by old Hector to negotiate the valuable werewolf for they took down. The merchant is completely shocked to hear that such a beast was defeated and brought to him. Seeing the confusion, the warrior decides not to correct the man, letting him believe the veteran was the hero of the story. Jacob's eyes widen as he realizes that it is a legitimate and very valuable werewolf fur. The other mercenaries in the tavern are impressed, thinking that old Hector is still a legend. With a sly smile, the merchant realizes he has struck gold with this rare merchandise. At that moment, greed takes over his face as he plans his next dirty move. Then, several thugs approach, surrounding the young man to make sure he doesn't try to escape. But the young man faces the situation with total seriousness. Realizing he has walked into a trap, Jacob puts the item over his shoulders and threatens the boy, telling him to get lost if he wants to stay alive. The adventurer feels betrayed, remembering that the veteran truly trusted this swindler, but the crook mocks him, saying this is just an investment to cover his old losses. He continues laughing while holding the valuable leather, acting as if he already owns everything. At that instant, the protagonist's eye glows a deep red, revealing an intense anger. He clenches his fist tightly, wondering if it's really worth taking out this human trash over a piece of fur. Suddenly, the swindler throws the rest of his drink in the young man's face to humiliate him in front of everyone. The thug tells the kid to stop trying to be smart and to get out of the tavern immediately. The fighter remains silent as the liquid drips down his face and the hatred grows inside him. But right after, the boy stands up from the chair with a heavy aura that scares those nearby. The wooden mug rolls across the floor as the young man begins to walk calmly through the room. Thinking the young man has surrendered, the merchant smiles, saying that was a very smart choice. But a sudden loud crash makes Jacob lose his smile and look back, totally confused by the noise. At that moment, the protagonist strikes the tavern's structure with a sharp blow, showing that his patience has finally run out. At that moment, the young man calls the swindler by name, while drops of the drink drip from his hair. With a fierce look, the protagonist warns that if the plan was to trick someone, he should have aimed for the throat and not the back. The shady merchant is left speechless as he realizes he has awakened the fury of a very dangerous opponent. Then the crook orders his henchmen to finish the boy off, since he doesn't seem to value his own life. One of the thugs charges forward screaming, trying to hit the young man with his heavy weapon. But the warrior reflects that taking down types like these wouldn't bring a single drop of guilt to his heart. With that, he blocks the attack with ease, causing the metal to collide loudly in the middle of the room. The brute's eyes widen, realizing that this newcomer's physical strength is something totally out of the ordinary. At that instant, the protagonist's eye glows intensely, indicating his next move will be devastating. With absurd speed, the young man moves between the enemies, delivering precise and effective strikes. Another henchman tries to use his axe to crush the target, but ends up missing his timing. He only hits the wooden floor, while the young man is already in position to end the fight for good. The fighter plants his foot firmly, preparing a move that no one there can predict. Then he kicks a heavy table directly at the opponents, who are trying to surround him from behind. One of the thugs despairs as he sees the object flying toward him with no time to escape the impact. The sound of a blade cutting through the air echoes through the place as the hero does his job masterfully. After the brutal blow, the room goes silent, and the marks of battle spread across the tavern floor. With a dirty face and a relentless look, the survivor stares at what remains of his opponents in the room. At that moment, Jacob breaks into a cold sweat and trembles in terror, wondering where this human monster came from. He desperately realizes he messed with the wrong guy, and that he might lose everything because of his greed. Making a circular motion with his sword, the young man breaks through the enemy's defense and leaves marks of combat all over the tavern. The warrior charges forward with impressive speed, hitting the next opponent before they have time for any defensive reaction. With a well-aimed strike, he hits a brute who is thrown back, feeling the full weight of the protagonist's strength. But the fighter doesn't stop there. He spins his body to deliver another attack against the remaining mercenaries in the room. The blade hits the last henchman, who falls defeated while silence returns to the totally destroyed environment. Standing among his opponents, the young man shows his red eyes glowing like a beast ready to continue its hunt. At that moment, his face shows an expression of extreme coldness that scares even the bravest men present. Desperate, the shady merchant begins to scream, telling everyone to run because he realizes the danger is right in front of him. With that, the few who can still move run away terrified, trying to escape the relentless warrior who attacked them. The swindler jumps through an opening, being thrown out of the tavern in a desperate attempt to save his own skin. Falling onto the dirt ground, the thug looks back, trembling with fear as he tries to understand how things went so wrong for him. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he notices a giant, dark presence that has just appeared in the middle of the silent village. A colossal red wolf emerges, growling furiously, and Jacob wonders what a beast like that is doing inside the village. The protagonist leaps over the fallen merchant, landing firmly between the thug and the new threat approaching him. Facing the beast, the young man maintains his combat stance, while the crook cowers on the ground, not knowing where to run. But soon the young man makes a thoughtful expression, trying to recognize that bizarre animal that seems to be following his every move. The wolf lets out loud, aggressive sounds, showing sharp teeth to try and intimidate the human blocking its path. At that instant, the survivor realizes this is the scout wolf he saw in the forest right after his last battle. With a steady gaze, the fighter asks the beast if it really traveled all this way just to meet its final end. Sensing the young man's heavy aura, the creature freezes completely, feeling a terrible shiver run through its furry body. Suddenly, the giant beast begins to whimper and cower on the ground, acting in a totally unexpected way. The creature begins to pant and wag its tail with great joy, looking like a needy puppy. The wolf jumps from side to side, showing absurd excitement that leaves everyone around completely confused. The mercenaries are paralyzed, wondering what got into this monster to make it act this way. But the young man watches the scene with disappointment, thinking the behavior of this stray is simply pathetic. Then the creature looks at the fighter with a pleading expression, hoping to get a little attention. At that moment, Jacob and his allies remain speechless at the sudden change in the wild beast's posture. The protagonist points to the thugs and gives a direct order, telling the animal to bite its targets. The red wolf's gaze changes instantly, becoming serious and ready to carry out the task it was given. With a powerful leap, it charges toward the first henchman to show it is still very dangerous. The beast hits the man with all its brutal strength, while the others watch helplessly. In an instant, the monster finishes the job quickly and efficiently, eliminating the threat in the blink of an eye. He watches the result with satisfaction and comments that the creature did a very good job against those crooks. Pale-faced, the swindler backs away in terror, realizing his situation has become truly desperate. The animal continues the attack against the rest of the thugs, ensuring no one can escape. Jacob tries to think fast, looking for a way to get out alive from the mess he created himself. But the young man glares at him with contempt, noting that the merchant is a complete idiot for trying to trick him. The crook then drops to his knees and begs for his life, promising to do whatever the warrior commands. Inside, the swindler seethes with hatred, planning a cruel revenge as soon as he can get out of this situation. At that moment, the heavy blade hits the ground right next to his head, making him tremble with absolute fear. With the crook down and bleeding heavily, the young man realizes this cheater's situation is much worse than he imagined. At that moment, the young man bows his head, feeling the metallic taste of blood, while mentally cursing his opponent. With a look of pure malice, the fighter wonders who this swindler thinks he's trying to fool now. A memory surfaces, showing the hero's past when he used to apologize for everything in a regular office. Recalling his old job, he remembers when the factory manager would say the company was going through a tough phase. Being a very kind guy, the worker just accepted the excuses, never imagining he was being cheated the whole time. As days passed, the 1 week late payment turned into a month, and then 2 months of waiting. Trying to collect what was rightfully his, the employee saw his boss having fun with golf instead of paying his debts, but the lazy boss would get angry, calling the protagonist an entitled brat just for wanting his hard, earned salary. Shouting in anger, the man would say that today's youth are selfish and that everyone should help each other during the firm's hard times. Returning to the present, the warrior glares at the traitor lying on the ground, feeling the weight of having lived in misery for so long. He walks away while the thug holds his injured face, letting out a sigh of relief that he's still breathing. The merchant is shocked by the overwhelming presence of the survivor, who seems to have not a single drop of mercy. Suddenly, a sickly smile appears on the swindler's face, revealing he still has a dirty trick up his sleeve. Quickly, the traitor pulls out a sharp dagger and charges from behind, trying to hit the target, who seemed to have his guard down. Jumping with hatred, the villain screams for the young man to die as he tries to deliver a fatal blow to end the fight once and for all. Noticing the movement, the young man turns his face with glowing red eyes, showing he was already expecting this cowardly attack. With impressive calm, the fighter uses his heavy blade to block the dagger, leaving his opponent not knowing what to do. He states that types like this merchant are the ones who deceive others the most, but never feel any real regret. At that instant, the crook's eyes widen as he feels absolute terror, realizing he has dug his own grave before the hero. The strike cuts through the air with devastating force, sealing the traitor's fate once and for all in the middle of the village. With that, the swindler's body falls to the ground, revealing that the hero's justice rarely fails. At that instant, the young man's gaze glows intensely, showing that he no longer has a trace of hesitation in his heart. He tells himself that he will never again let himself be treated as weak or as someone anyone can easily deceive. Then, the fighter takes a deep breath and decides it's time to focus on his next step within this totally unknown universe. The red wolf appears carrying a small bag of coins in its mouth, acting very helpful and friendly toward him. With a quick movement, the animal drops the leather pouch on the ground, drawing the curiosity of its new battle commander. Inside the bag, the gold shines brightly, proving the reward for the work has finally reached the traveler's hands. Watching the scene, the warrior wonders where the creature got the smarts to act like a true professional scavenger. The adventurer then asks if the creature really wants to follow him on his future missions and adventures across this continent. With a friendly gesture, the young man touches the animal's fur, and it closes its eyes, feeling the protection and affection of its master. At that moment, the gentle contact seals an unbreakable alliance between the human and the beast, who are now official teammates. While looking at the creature, the protagonist realizes that having an ally like this will be the great advantage to surviving in this cruel world. Calling his partner very smart, the survivor smiles for the first time, feeling that his luck is changing for the better. With that, the young man says the two of them will get along very well from now on as they prepare to leave that place. Thus, the journey continues with new challenges on the horizon as the story of the monster hunter gains a brand new chapter. The sky reflects the passage of time, showing that the day is about to break after a night full of victories and many discoveries. Now in a soft bed, the protagonist wakes up feeling very good, his body covered in bandages from the recent fights. With a relaxed expression, the fighter concludes that his sleep was simply perfect and that he managed to recover all his energy. At that moment, he stretches thoroughly, feeling refreshed to face any dangerous challenge that comes his way. Washing his face in a wooden basin, the young man tries to wash away every trace of the intense battles he recently faced. With a deep sigh, the young man feels the freshness of the water as he relaxes his muscles after eliminating his enemies. The warrior reflects on the fact that he has taken several people's lives for the first time in his entire existence. But the adventurer wonders why he doesn't feel a single drop of guilt or remorse for what he did in the village. At that moment, he stares into space, trying to understand if his mind is becoming too cold because of this cruel world. The hero then realizes that the excitement of fighting humans was exactly the same as when he hunted monsters in the forest. With his hand on his chest, the fighter feels the strong beat of his heart and notices that something very strange is changing inside him. The hunter observes his own body, realizing that his essence is transforming into something totally different than before. He questions whether he was hit by some bizarre curse, or if this change is just his survival instinct speaking loudly. With that, the traveler walks beside the giant beast, thinking that his new life will be much more abundant and full of riches. At that instant, the young man decides he will just enjoy the present without worrying about the rules of his old world. Carrying the heavy leather, the protagonist finally reaches the outskirts of the fifth pioneer city to do his business. The young man tells the Red Wolf to stay hidden nearby so as not to cause panic among the local residents. Walking through the streets, the survivor looks for the headquarters of the Order Alliance, where he intends to trade his prize for gold coins. He reflects that he needs to be quick to collect the reward and wonders if he should keep calling his ally astray. Suddenly, the fighter spots the organization's building while a lazy employee yawns at the service window. Reaching the counter, the adventurer asks if that place is really the right spot to deal with hunting matters. With a sudden move, the young man throws the blue fur onto the wood, making a dry thud that wakes the clerk up instantly. At that moment, the hero states with all seriousness that he has come to collect payment for the elimination of the wild creature, but the man examines the material with disdain, saying it looks like dog hide, and tells the boy to stop playing games. The employee's eyes widen as he notices that the material thrown on the counter isn't from just any animal. With that, the clerk states in surprise that the fur actually belongs to a legitimate and very rare werewolf. At that moment, the man asks, stuttering, if the young man himself was responsible for taking down such a powerful beast alone. The young man confirms with total calmness, saying he defeated the monster not long ago. The hero waits, sitting in a luxurious room, while those in charge prepare the payment for his great feat. Soon, another official enters the room, apologizing for the delay in verifying the authenticity of the valuable item. With that, the gentleman hands over a heavy bag stuffed with gold, confirming that the werewolf prize is indeed real. The warrior looks at the amount, thinking that the sum is enough for him to live without working for about 7 years. At that instant, the shine of the coins reflects in the hunter's eyes, who can hardly believe the fortune he just earned. He notices that the trimmer from holding so much money is quite different from the adrenaline he feels during his deadly hunts. But suddenly, the official calls the young man's attention again, appearing to have something very important to discuss with him. The man then asks if the adventurer would be interested in accepting a new special mission in exchange for more gold. The protagonist shows immediate interest and asks what the next goal of this dangerous journey would be. At that moment, the employee explains that a bizarre creature has appeared in a nearby quarry and is causing many problems. The gentleman explains that the workers are terrified and unable to mine the bloodstones because of the danger, but due to this shutdown, the entire city's economy is going down the drain and chaos could spread. He warns that this beast is considered much stronger than any werewolf that has ever appeared in those parts. Even so, the official states he feels total confidence that the young hero would be able to solve this big problem. The survivor asks with a serious look what the name and type of this beast is that he must hunt. The man then reveals that the monster is called Mad Skull and that the reward for its head is 70 gold coins. Additionally, the young man notices that he has faced this bizarre monster before as he visualizes the colossal size of the beast in front of him. The young man observes that the target has a tough skull that serves as natural armor, protecting its entire forehead. Because of this, the beast's aggressiveness is terrifying, being much more lethal and stronger than any werewolf he has ever seen. The warrior then recalls that it took him 1 month to overcome this challenge, because he ended up being defeated 28 times in the past. But the official asks with concern if the hero really believes he can handle such a dangerous creature. At that moment, the adventurer remains silent, just processing the information while maintaining a steady gaze on the gentleman. The hunter shows a confident smile while stating that this beast will definitely be his next great prey. The young man arrives at the huge quarry where the Mad Skull monster is causing serious problems for all the local miners. Walking along the edge of the excavation, the hunter reflects on how work has stopped because of this beast that is considered very dangerous. Observing the gloomy atmosphere of the mine, the young man decides that it is best to finish this task as quickly as possible to get out of there soon. Suddenly, a loud voice echoes, asking the traveler to wait a little before continuing his way toward the bottom of the place. At that moment, a red-haired mercenary states that his group arrived first and that the rookie must respect the turn of those who are ahead. With an unfriendly look, the protagonist wonders, since when there has been a line to hunt wild monsters in this crazy world. Noticing the tension, the stranger feels awkward and tries to change the tone of the conversation so as not to upset the fighter, who looks pretty intimidating. Then the captain suggests that the young man join their team so that everyone can hunt that bizarre creature together and share the risks. The survivor analyzes the proposal, thinking that waiting for the group to finish the job would be a massive waste of time for his plans. Even if he has to split the profit, the warrior reflects that maybe working as a team is the smartest choice right now, but he keeps his guard up, remembering that it is not safe at all to trust strangers in this hostile place full of traitors. At that moment, the young man asks the reason they want a stranger in the group, considering they already have many members ready for the fight. With an awkward laugh, the redhead admits that he prefers to focus on everyone's safety rather than the individual performance of his men in the field. Facing the young man, the mercenary states with absolute certainty that the rookie seems to be an incredibly powerful and very experienced fighter. Noticing the sudden respect, the hunter asks what the exact reason would be for this guy to suspect his real combat strength so much. With that, the group leader points to the red wolf while a blonde girl pets the beast without showing an ounce of fear. The girl comments that these animals are known to be independent and that she has never seen one of them follow a human so faithfully. The hero is shocked to realize that his ally disobeyed the order to stay hidden and appeared in front of everyone for food. With that, the beast devours a huge piece of juicy meat it received from the woman and leaves its owner very jealous of that meal. The creature continues eating with an expression of total satisfaction, while completely ignoring the disapproving look of its grumpy master. The juicy piece of meat falls onto the dusty ground while the delicious smell spreads through the air of the quarry. At that moment, the beast looks at the fallen food and stares at its master with an expression of someone offering a banquet. But the young man is indignant at the disrespect from his furry ally, asking if the beast really thinks he is a pig. With that, the food begins to shine in such a tempting way that it becomes difficult for the hero to ignore his hunger. At that moment, the fighter swallows hard, feeling his stomach rumble at that delicacy that looks like it came out of a dream. He mentally wonders when was the last time he had the chance to enjoy a real meal in this new world. However, the warrior soon remembers that a dog was drooling on it and that the food is all dirty with dirt. With that, he reflects on his own human dignity and tries to resist the urge to pick up the leftovers from the floor. Suddenly, the blonde girl notices the situation and offers a brand new piece of meat straight from her supply bag. The hunter is completely surprised by the kind gesture of his new acquaintance. While his eyes shine with pure joy, in that instant, he sees the girl as if she were a true goddess who came down from the sky to save his life. With that, the mercenary group starts entering the dark caves of the mine to begin the hunting operation. Savoring every piece, the young man notices that the seasoning is amazing and far superior to the awful things he used to eat before. Then the young woman comments that they haven't formally introduced themselves yet and decides to strike up a conversation with the rookie. The red-haired captain identifies himself as Jonathan from the Black Marlin group, while the girl says her name is Claire. At that moment, the protagonist almost reveals his real name, but decides to be called only Jin to maintain a certain mystery. Jonathan smiles with confidence, announcing that they have finally arrived at the exact spot where the Mad Skull usually appears. With the leader's command, the trap specialists start preparing the heavy nets to catch the monster. Then the redhead calls his partner to get into position and start the combat, which promises to be very difficult for everyone. At that moment, a glowing aura surrounds the battlefield, leaving the young man impressed with the power that is emerging there. With that, the young man watches the mage float while a greenish glow and several magical feathers appear around the place. With that, a circle of light appears over the ancient book and reveals that this power is something mentioned only in legends. At that moment, the girl closes her eyes and asks for a special blessing to protect all the allies in that dangerous land. Then, the effect of the feather step, magic hits the captain and leaves him surrounded by an aura of impressive speed. He shows a very determined look as he feels his body become light, as if he could fly through the quarry. At that moment, the blonde warns that the warrior only has 3 to 5 minutes to perform the risky maneuver against the target. With the green glow on his feet, the group leader prepares to lure the beast toward the ambush spot. Suddenly, the redhead takes off in a frantic sprint, while the other group members watch his departure. Jin notices that his companion has become much more agile and reflects that the witchcraft of this world is really quite interesting. The fighter wonders if he could also learn to use these mystical tricks if he decided to study with a master. But one of the men shouts a warning that there is no time to waste because the Mad Skull monster is approaching. With that, the mercenaries hold tight to the ropes of the nets at the top of the rocks and wait for the right moment for the attack. The protagonist observes the plan to corner the beast and unleash all their power on it, thinking the idea makes sense. Even so, he maintains a serious expression and wonders if this strategy will really work against such a brute monster. In that instant, the colossal creature with huge horns emerges from the shadows and begins to chase the man acting as bait. Shouting with all his might, the commander orders the trap team to get ready to capture the fierce enemy. The beast jumps with anger, showing off sharp teeth, while the captain uses his new agility to dodge the dangerous strike. The soldiers yell in panic as they confirm that the rock demon has finally revealed itself to everyone present. With a coordinated movement, the giant net falls over the beast, which roars furiously, trying to break free from the tough ropes. At that moment, all the men pull the ties with force to pin the opponent to the ground and ensure it doesn't escape. Then Captain Jonathan orders the spear team to attack with everything they have, while the beast struggles desperately inside the heavy net. With that, the warriors quickly get into position, raising their pointy weapons to deliver the first strike against the enemy. But at that moment, the soldiers hit the beast through the ropes, trying to pierce the thick skin of this rock demon. With that, the monster lets out a roar of pure rage, showing that the attack only made it even more furious and dangerous for the group. At that moment, several men start losing their balance as they try to hold the absurd weight of the creature that is fighting to break free. The opponent's eyes glow a fierce red, revealing that its strength is far superior to what the mercenaries imagined. Observing the confusion, the young man realizes that things are not going as planned, and that the danger is only increasing for everyone. At that moment, the beast begins to drag the soldiers across the dirt floor, causing the defense formation to be completely destroyed. Jonathan yells for them to hold the ropes tight, but his allies fall one by one before the raw power of this massive adversary. Then the creature roars again with uncontrollable fury, tearing the ties that were supposed to keep its body pinned to the ground. The beast's eyes show a scary aggressiveness, indicating that the next target will be anyone standing in its way. Suddenly, the rock giant lunges forward in a quick jump, completely ignoring the band of mercenaries trying to surround it. Claire watches the attack with an expression of pure dread, feeling that her life is in real danger at this exact moment. With that, the mage tries to step back, but realizes that the enemy is too fast, and she doesn't have time to prepare a new defense spell. But the young protagonist appears out of nowhere and steps right in front of the girl to protect her from the devastating impact that was coming. The warrior slides his feet across the ground, feeling the crushing pressure of the enemy's advance while keeping his firm combat stance. With superhuman strength, the hunter grabs the creature's massive horn, stopping its movement right in its tracks. In that instant, the hero's face is just inches away from the sharp teeth of the beast, which roars furiously at being stopped by a human. Desperate, the blonde warns that Jin is in danger, but he doesn't seem to care about facing such a huge threat. Then the young man looks over his shoulder and tells his companion not to worry, because he is in total control of the situation. With that, the young man stares into the red eyes of the beast as he states that he knows exactly what to do against this opponent. At that moment, the hunter's eyes shine intensely, revealing that he knows the secret to defeating the terrible monster once and for all, holding the beast's fangs with a lot of brute force. The fighter faces the opponent with total firmness. At that moment, he quickly steps back to avoid being crushed by the colossal weight of that wild beast. Delivering a swift strike, the young man tries to find an opening in the giant monster's natural defense. With a very focused look, the hunter prepares his next critical maneuver while holding his sharp blade. Then the hero hits the target with surgical precision in the middle of the intense battle. He reflects that even though he has gotten stronger, the resistance of this enemy is still something that surprises him. Roaring with great anger, the Mad Skull shows that it won't go down so easily against the human. Sensing the immediate danger, the young man dodges a side attack that could have ended his journey. Suddenly, the blonde mage uses her powers to send mystical aid toward her new ally. Surrounded by light and magical feathers, the protagonist feels a renewed vigor run through every muscle in his body. With that, the adventurer notices that his weight has decreased a lot, making his rapid movement across the battlefield much easier. In that instant, a confident smile appears on the warrior's face, who now feels ready to finish the hunt. Seeing the young man's courage, Captain Jonathan and his men state that they will help in the final combat. But the young man orders everyone to stay back, because he prefers to handle this dangerous situation by himself. With that, the mystical energy continues circulating around the fighter, ensuring that he maintains his maximum speed. Running with determination, the survivor charges at the giant beast to put his secret plan into action. He reflects that there are only a few crucial details a master needs to know to defeat this type of beast. Even though it seems unbeatable, the fighter notes that this creature is nothing more than a very large type of wild pig. Although the beast is very fast in a straight line, it has a huge difficulty changing directions abruptly. Using this obvious weakness, the young man plans to pin the opponent against the rocks to ensure his definitive victory. Jin leaps with everything he has toward the beast, while dodging its dangerous charges with great ease. At that moment, the monster's paw ends up slipping on the smooth floor of the mine, and the beast totally loses its balance. Then the colossal creature crashes hard into the rocks and raises a cloud of dust all over the place. The young man realizes that the spell has made him very fast, and now he can move effortlessly. At that moment, the fighter analyzes the enemy's sharp fangs and realizes that they work as natural weapons. But he knows his machete wouldn't cut that hard bone, and because of that, he needs a different strategy. With that, the young man decides to focus his next strike on the beast's snout, which is the most sensitive part of the beast. Delivering a powerful cut, the hero hits the target dead on and makes the fluid fly while the monster screams in pain. At that moment, the creature's suffering only increases, and it becomes impossible for it to continue attacking the warrior with the same strength. Then the protagonist takes advantage of the opening and jumps again to finish the job once and for all. The blade tears through the opponent's thick skin, and the impact makes the ground shake under the experienced hunter's feet. With a sharp movement, he delivers another heavy attack to ensure the enemy cannot get back up. In that instant, the young man spins his body in the air and completes the sequence of strikes with absolute mastery. He shows a victorious look as the dust settles and reveals the impressive result of that whole fight. With that, Jonathan and Claire run out of the cave, completely worried about what might have happened. But upon arriving at the scene, the mercenaries are shocked to see only rubble and total silence in the quarry. At that moment, the girl looks for her ally desperately, trying to find some sign that her friend is okay. Suddenly, the giant wolf emerges from among the rocks with a very calm expression, acting as if nothing had happened. The companions look at the animal, not understanding anything at all, as they try to process the bizarre situation in front of them. Finally, the beast lets out a long yawn, showing that the fight ended too quickly for its refined taste. The young man returns to the group, while his animal companion follows him closely, observing the surroundings of the mine. With a dirty face, the young man reflects that he couldn't simply leave the beast essence behind after so much effort. At that moment, the adventurer announces that the monster has been eliminated, but the mercenaries are left completely speechless at the hero's news. Then the giant mutt sniffs the prey's carcass, which is now nothing more than a lifeless pile of meat tossed on the ground. Shocked by the victory, the captain states that he has never seen anyone defeat a danger like that, acting completely alone on the field. But suddenly, the red wolf lets out a low growl, sensing a strange new presence emerging from the shadows. With that, the teammates go on alert, trying to understand the reason for so much agitation from the furry beast at that moment. At that moment, another giant pig comes out of a dark tunnel, revealing that the problem isn't totally over yet. The creature stares at the humans with red eyes and sharp fangs, showing that it is ready to defend its territory right there. Desperate, the redhead shouts for everyone to prepare for combat, because a second enemy has just appeared in front of them, but the blonde asks everyone to wait a moment, because she noticed a very important detail in the behavior of that wild beast. At that moment, the beast walks slowly, revealing that it is accompanied by two little cubs that seem very scared of the group. The little ones let out soft and cute sounds while hiding behind the huge paws of their protector, looking for some safety. With a sad look, the larger animal lets out a low whine, as it were just trying to protect its beloved family. In that instant, the protagonist observes the scene in silence, trying to decide if that situation really requires a little more fighting. Gently, the mother pig starts guiding her little ones away from the commotion, showing that she doesn't want to start a fight right now. Everyone present watches the retreat in silence, as the heavy atmosphere of the battle slowly begins to fade from the quarry. Jonathan wonders if the creature is really leaving, and gives up on attacking upon realizing there is no real danger anymore. Claire comments that the beast probably just wanted to raise its babies in that place, and feels a bit sorry for the situation. Finally, the hero watches that family's departure, thinking that at least they decided to leave, without causing more annoying problems. Night falls over the fifth pioneer city, while the moon shines in the sky, lighting up all the rooftops of the village houses. At that moment, the lights of a local tavern shine, indicating that the band of hunters has finally returned from their hard work. Inside, Captain Jonathan celebrates with all his men, saying that no one got hurt and that the hunt was a huge success. With a huge smile, the redhead states that the most awaited time of the hunt has arrived, which is the moment to receive their hard-earned payment. With that, the mercenaries shout with joy, celebrating the end of the dangerous mission, while getting ready to line their pockets with gold. But the young Claire looks at the coin bags and notices that the amount seems to be much larger than the 70 coins agreed upon. Then the commander laughs a lot, explaining that the extra value is the result of a little confusion he created himself at the delivery counter. He tells them that there were two monsters at the site besides the cubs, and that the mission was much more dangerous than previously informed. With that, the leader shouts that he managed to squeeze 110 gold coins out of the contractors, leaving his entire group very excited. But the protagonist stays silent, wondering how they got paid for a beast they didn't even actually fight in the cave. At that moment, the rascal makes a suspicious expression and confesses that he told a little lie to add value to his team's effort. The warriors laugh and give a thumbs up, agreeing that if no one discovered the farce, then what the captain said is the truth. At that moment, the young man sighs, thinking that this group of adventurers is really a very interesting bunch and completely out of the ordinary. Suddenly, the redhead puts his hand on the hero's shoulder, getting his attention to discuss a very serious matter regarding the payment. He announces to the whole room that he has decided to give half of all the mission's profits to his new combat ally. Surprised, the young man asks if he is really going to receive half of everything, considering he only helped at the end of the fight against the beast. But the captain states seriously that if it weren't for the rookie's help, the whole group would have been completely defeated in that quarry. With that, the veteran asks the boy to accept the money with a happy heart, because he deserves every cent of that valuable reward. The other team members happily agree and give a thumbs up, showing that they deeply respect this warrior's talent. Scratching his face, the adventurer reflects that between the magic and the traps, he really was a fundamental piece for the total success of the mission. Holding a mug of drink, the young man realizes that not all the people in this new world are bad. Then the captain enthusiastically raises his glass, announcing that today's round is on him. With that, all the mercenaries start drinking and partying, celebrating the victory of that tiring day. But the protagonist notices the blonde girl walking past him and gets curious about her attitude in the middle of the party. At that moment, the young man asks where she is going, and she answers with a smile that she is going to practice spells. Hearing that, the hero is completely surprised, trying to understand the reason for so much effort at that hour. Already outside, the mage sits on the ground under the light of the full moon, while a mystical energy emerges. At that moment, the woman closes her eyes and concentrates deeply, letting a bluish aura flow through the air. Hidden behind a tree, the fighter watches everything, reflecting that the girl must be exhausted after the battle. With a very thoughtful look, the warrior analyzes the glowing power and is amazed by that technique. Then the adventurer wonders if it wouldn't also be a great idea to try learning magic in the future. The adventurer asks if he can learn magic while carrying a heavy net, and the blonde girl agrees with the idea, feeling very excited, surprised by how easy it is. The hero listens to the mage saying she already wanted to give him some kind of gift anyway. The young woman then states that he saved her from danger, unlike a certain someone, and because of that, she will be very happy to teach him the spells, rubbing it in the captain's face. She complains that the group doesn't know how to protect their allies, but the rookie is quite different from all of them. However, the redhead interrupts the conversation, warning them that magic isn't learned that quickly, and the group needs to leave the village in 2 days. Annoyed, the girl suggests that the warrior travel with them, but the commander questions why such a strong hunter would travel with their group. With that, the leader gives the young man a hug, saying that a brave fighter prefers to be alone, and it would be very impolite to interrupt his journey. At that moment, the protagonist reflects that he has nothing to do, and feels that the mercenary is forcing him to act proud for no reason. So, the hero decides to lie a little and asks about the team's next destination, hearing from the redhead that they are heading to the 4th Pioneer City. Keeping his composure, the young man states that he was also planning to head in that exact same direction and asks if he could travel along with them. Turning his back, the young man plays it off by saying he can learn spells on the way, while his 2 companions laugh at the lie. Suddenly, the 2 of them grab the boy with great joy, shouting that it is a huge coincidence and that they would love to have a strong ally. With a small smile on his face, the survivor reflects that his next destination has finally been decided in a very peaceful way. In the morning, the caravan begins its long journey, accompanying a colossal creature that carries several heavy tents on its back. This huge animal is called a Tarrasque, being one of the few magical monsters that humanity managed to tame for heavy transport. Walking close to the beast, the hunter is amazed by its absurd size, noticing that people use them instead of regular horses. Further ahead, the redhead catches the entire team's attention, warning them that they need to hurry because they still have a long way to go. As night falls, the protagonist sits on the ground to meditate while the mage sleeps, soon realizing that learning something new is very difficult. Breaking a cold sweat, the fighter reflects that there are several reasons why this is complicated, but the hardest part of all is the great effort of repetition. Then, he remembers the lessons with his companion, noting that growth only happens by repeating the same thing, even if progress is quite slow. The young man continues to sweat a lot as he reflects that this stage of mystical training is very hard and usually stalls at a certain level. However, he is already well used to the pain of having to repeat the exact same thing several times in a row just to get some result. The warrior then remembers the 12 years of agony he endured in the past, just to survive and grow more powerful. With that, he opens his eye, showing a huge determination to stay focused until he finally achieves the desired success. At that moment, a small magical light appears shining in the air, indicating that the hunter knows this hard path of effort very well. Then, the adventurer falls to the ground completely surprised when he feels the mana, while the blonde girl claps, celebrating his progress. But the young man reflects that it took him 10 whole days just to be able to feel it, and confirms that this task is quite complicated. The mage sits next to him and confesses that the rookie is quite slow, but it was still great, since many lose their lives without ever feeling mana. Very excited, the girl announces that it is time for the second step, and starts digging through her bag looking for something important. The teacher then takes out a glowing flask and pours a very mysterious magical blue liquid into a small bowl. In that instant, she puts on a pair of gloves, while casually asking the warrior to take off his shirt. The young man is completely shocked by this unusual request, and stares at his companion without understanding what is going on. A cold breeze blows through the trees of the dark forest, which is lit by the full moon, making the atmosphere a bit awkward. Then, the young woman dips her finger in that weird blue liquid while our hero tries to process what is going to happen next. With his back bare, the fighter asks what she is doing, and the blonde explains that she is drawing a path to fuse the energy into his body. With the glowing symbol finished, the teacher warns that she is going to inject the power and asks her disciple to try and feel everything very carefully, maintaining total concentration. The protagonist just nods and prepares himself to receive that unknown power. The woman's hand then gets closer to the warrior's back, making the magic circle shine very intensely and give off sparks. Suddenly, the young man's entire body is wrapped in an extremely bright blue light, leaving the hunter with his eyes wide open. A huge energy kicks up the wind from the ground as the survivor notices that this power is on a completely different level than before. The hunter feels an incredible energy, shining like lightning inside his body, noticing that it flows in a much denser way than blood. The blonde girl then asks if he can finally feel the mana, while the young man confirms that he senses something very strong rushing through him. With a smile, the mage points out that this was just the first step to using spells, and soon explains that there are 3 basic stages in magic. The teacher then details that the first stage is feeling the energy, and then storing it all in the body, so you can finally use the power at the end. Since the warrior has already successfully passed the initial test, the young woman decides that it's the perfect time to move straight to the second phase. At that moment, she warns that she will guide the mana to his heart, asking the hero to create an imaginary space, as if he were holding his breath. Sweating a lot, the protagonist closes his eyes and focuses as hard as he can, preparing his body to store all this absurd power. With that, his teammate excitedly shouts for them to begin and pushes a massive wave of blue light directly into the student's back. The mystical symbol drawn on the fighter's skin then begins to shine intensely, absorbing every drop of that powerful forest magic. But suddenly, the young man's vision completely changes, showing a bizarre beast that looks like a scary mix of an insect and a praying mantis. This giant green creature appears out of nowhere in the middle of the darkness, displaying a terrifying look that would leave anyone terrified. The colossal monster stands still while the adventurer observes this creepy illusion, not understanding why this image is appearing in his mind. Then, the dreadful beast turns its face slowly, revealing glowing red eyes that stare into the warrior's soul with great aggression. To make matters worse, dozens of other bizarre eyes open on the beast's body, proving that this demon is an extreme-level threat. Back in the real world, a dark drop falls on the teacher's forehead, making the young woman startle as she feels a shadowy energy emerging out of nowhere. Realizing that something is very wrong, the blonde girl goes into a state of shock and tries to figure out what went wrong with the training. At that moment, the blue magic around the survivor completely loses control, creating a dangerous whirlpool that scares the poor mage. Desperate and with tears in her eyes, she realizes that her own mana is being forcefully sucked into the body of her new teammate. With the danger growing rapidly, a furry tail appears out of nowhere and tightly wraps around the girl's waist to get her out of that mess. Luckily, the red wolf pulls the young woman away, saving her life, while the rookie remains on the ground surrounded by an uncontrollable power. The mage is tossed into the air as the wolf's tail holds her very firmly to avoid the imminent danger. Being carefully placed on the ground, the young woman stares at the furry beast, trying to understand the animal's unexpected behavior. Breathing a sigh of relief, she realizes that the creature noticed the deadly risk and acted fast to save her from that overwhelming force. At that instant, the protagonist's voice echoes through the area, calling out to his companion, while the blue magical aura finally disappears. Looking at the teacher, the hunter asks if everything is all right, noticing that the girl seems completely terrified by the situation. Still in shock, the blonde girl reflects that the creepy illusion she just witnessed was actually a mental world. Being a clear manifestation of someone's power, this type of mystical vision takes the shape of its own private universe. In this, each person has a unique space that reflects the experiences and the life the fighter has led up to that exact moment. But the woman cannot understand how such an evil and monstrous presence could exist inside her new ally's mind. With a very serious look, she approaches the young man, demanding that he be completely honest about his mysterious past. Then, the healer asks if by any chance the survivor consumed a mana core during his dangerous journey. Hearing this, the warrior tilts his head to the side, completely confused by this weird term he has never heard before. The mage soon explains that they are monster crystals, and the hero confirms that he eats those glowing essences all the time. Trembling with fear, the girl loses her composure and questions how long the rookie has been doing this crazy thing, and what the exact amount would be. Calmly, the young man reveals that he has been swallowing them for 10 years and guesses he must have eaten tens of thousands of those stones. Seeing her panic, the adventurer questions if there is any problem with that, while the blonde yells that the situation is very serious. Trying to calm her nerves, the teacher explains in detail what happens when an ordinary human decides to ingest a core. With a choked voice, she states that the person who makes this mistake ends up losing their life on the spot or turning into a bizarre monster. At that exact moment, the hunter's face is lit by the moon, revealing a reddish and incredibly sinister glow in his